talking with Professor Haim Shor of Ben Gurion University of the Negev, and we're discussing biblical designs in the Hebrew text. We're talking about symmetry, randomness, the world of nature, the world of the creation story, and I hope you'll join us for this upcoming program to discuss some of the intricacies of the Hebrew language and the Bible. Professor Haim Shor has written a book. We're going to be talking about the cases of design in biblical Hebrew. So let us consult the interview that I conducted with Professor Haim Shor at the offices of the university, that we could discuss with him some of these ideas that he was sharing with me. I now share them with you.
I think that the Torah has a message. I myself was surprised to find how precise the Torah is. In fact, I'm sometimes sorry that I find translation of the Torah that are not exact and the original meaning is lost. I have on my blog a whole post about the mathematical precision of the Torah, but I want to concentrate on three simple examples. You read Genesis, the first chapter. Vayi erev, vayi boker, yom echad. What is the English translation? Most Bible translations say, and there was evening, and there was morning, first day. Now Avi, tell me, how can there be a first day if there's still no second day? You can't say first day when the other 5 days didn't exist yet. So I went from one translation to the next until I found the right translation. It was Vayi erev, vayi boker, yom echad. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. This is the right translation. Let me give you another example. Love thy neighbor as yourself. Is this what is written in the Torah? Not exactly. Tell me, a fisherman, does he love fish? And the answer is yes, of course he loves fish. You can love fish and you can love your child. Totally different kind of love, even though you use the same word. You love fish because it has good taste, it satisfies your desires, your wishes. This is one kind of love. This is the egoistic love. When you say I love my child, is because I am there available to the child to fulfill his desires, his wishes, just to be there for him. So how is it written in the Torah? Is it written, love your neighbor as yourself? Not at all. It's very, very strange formulation. In Hebrew it says, ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha. It's not, I'll translate it literally, it's not love your neighbor. It's love to your neighbor. Now, when do you use the word to? Ve'afta lereacha, le is to. When do you use to? You use to when you give something. You give a donation to a company. You give a present to a person. So the Torah was very precise. You don't love your neighbor, you love to your neighbor. In case anybody make a mistake that the love of your neighbor is like the love of the fish, no, it's completely different. That's the Bible's precision. And the Torah, I didn't find it anywhere else in the Torah. The Torah uses love as we use it regularly. But in this particular place in the Torah, it's love to your neighbor. Very strange, very strange. But it gives you the precise meaning. To understand how sometimes the translation into English loses the original meaning. There is a very known verse, don't put an obstacle before the blind, right? And you have it everywhere. This is the common translation. Don't put an obstacle in front of the blind. Is this what is written in the Torah? It's not don't put an obstacle to the blind, not at all. Don't give an obstacle to the blind. How can you give an obstacle to the blind? I'll give you an example. You're selling a second-hand car. You know there is a defect in the car. You don't tell to the buyer. This is to give an obstacle to the blind. The buyer is the blind. And there are many other examples. So don't put an obstacle to the blind. Everybody knows it. You don't have to state it. But not to give an obstacle to the blind, this is something new. And this is what is written in the Torah. And I give many other examples. So the Torah is very precise. Now, why is that important? I want to talk about names in the Bible. And you can't refer seriously to names in the Bible unless you understand that the Torah is mathematically precise. Because I can start giving all kinds of interpretation to names, and people will ask me, why do you give such weight to names? I mean, one time you use this name, another time you use the other name. Not so. In the Torah, every name has a meaning. And there are so many places in the Torah where names are referred to, related to. And we just start with the first chapter of Genesis. God brings all the animals to Adam so that he will give names to the animals. Vayitzer Adonai Elohim min ha'adama kol chayat השדה ואת כל עוף השמיים ויבא אל האדם לראות מה יקרא לו וכל אשר יקרא לו האדם נפש חיה הוא שמו. So already in the first chapter, such serious reference to names, because names describe the essence of that which is named. And then when you go on and on and on, both in the Torah and in the prophets, you see relating to names again and again and again. We know that God told Abraham that he should change his name. He put an extra letter in the name. Instead of Avram, Abraham. He put an A in the name. Changing the name of Sarai, Abraham's wife. Instead of Sarai, Sarah. And on and on and on. The most extraordinary verse that I find in the Torah is in Exodus. וידבר אלוהים אל משה ויאמר אליו אני אדוני. I'll translate it into English, preserving the names of God. And God, Elohim, and Elohim talked to Moses and said to him, I am Jehovah. Now when you look at these two names in the Bible, Elohim and Jehovah, they have very specific meanings. Very specific meanings. And when I go from one place to another, the Torah, the prophets, they are so precise in the use of the two names, Elohim and Jehovah. What's the difference between these two names? Now, we have to be very careful here, because unlike other names in the Torah, when I said that the names express the essence of what is named, of course you can't say the same about God. So the two names are not names for God, but names for his leadership of the world. The word Elohim comes from force, El in Hebrew is force. Eloah, force. So when you refer to Elohim, you refer to the Creator, the one who has all the forces, right? Jehovah is completely different. Jehovah is the leadership of God in the area of randomness. This refers to morality, to righteousness, to grace. In fact, you have a certain chapter in Exodus where you have details of the 13 virtues of the leadership of God. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim, v'Rav Chesed v'Emet. These are the virtues of the leadership of God, which is concentrated in the name Jehovah. Now, if you understand these two names, meaning one name is God as a creator, Elohim, the ruler of all the forces of nature. The other name, Jehovah, which is the other side of the leadership of God, grace, righteousness, morality. Then we read again the verse, and God spoke to Moses and said, I am God. The two names are combined. And when you think about it, this is not self-evident. It's so peculiar. Why should God as creator will be also God as the source of morality, of righteousness, of virtue? You look at the gods in the old Greece, Rome, the pantheon of the goddess that they had. Gods had emotions. Gods were fighting with each other. They didn't have morality. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. This is a verse that the Jew repeat a few times every day. The oneness of God. It's repeated everywhere, again and again and again. So you can ask yourself, oneness of God compared to what? Two God? Multiple gods? What do you mean the oneness of God? And I believe there is only one meaning to this verse. The oneness of God means that Elohim and Jehovah are one. Law of nature and morality, their source is one. Let me go back to the story of Adam and Eve, because really here I find a validation to my perception of Elohim and Jehovah, which you see it so clearly in the story of the Adam and Eve and the sin of eating of the fruit of knowledge. Here again you have a problem with the translation, because how do you explain Etz Adat Tov V'Ra? Ra in Hebrew is not evil. I'm so amazed at the translation of Tov V'Ra. Shall I tell you what is Tov V'Ra in quality engineering, which is my profession? For every product that we produce, there are requirements. Requirements from all kinds of perspectives. Requirements from the user of the product, requirements of the engineers, and so on. Just to give you one example. You are buying a car. You don't require that the car will not turn over in a curve. But the engineers put this requirement. Why I'm saying it? Because there were cases in the past where very big companies produced cars, and in one case, the car, a small car, turned over in curves. So when you start producing a product, you have requirements. And then you translate the requirements into specifications. When we produce the product, these are the specifications. What do we call Tov and Ra, or in our English, conforming or not conforming, good and bad? What is a good item and what is a bad item? A good item is that which conforms to the specifications. A bad item is one that does not conform to the specifications. I believe that Adam and Eve, Tov and Ra, have exactly the same interpretation, and I want to prove it to you. And this is my interpretation about the whole story, and it goes back to Elohim and Jehovah. You read the story, and you have the narrator relating the story, talking about this, giving the story, the timeline of the story, and then you have Adam and Eve and the serpent talking. What name does the narrator use for God? Do you know what name is used? Jehovah Elohim. What is the name of God used by the serpent and Eve? Elohim only. What does it mean? And they want to eat of the fruit of knowledge so that they will be like Elohim. They don't want to be like Elohim Jehovah. They want to be like Elohim only. What does it mean to be like Elohim? Fruit of knowledge. If they'll be like Elohim, they'll know the law of nature and they'll be able to rule nature. But nothing to do with morality. They are not interested in morality. That's why they don't use the word Jehovah. In the story, you have the narrator 11 times referring to God by Elohim Jehovah. When Eve and the serpent refer to God, Adam doesn't mention God, but when serpent and Eve refer to God 4 times, only Elohim. The world of the law of nature represent Elohim. We are not aware yet that the world of randomness represents Jehovah. And that's why we have this long, long history when we try to control nature, but don't really mind about killing people. And I believe that what the prophets are saying, that when we are coming to the end's day, thou shalt not murder will be considered as valid as the gravitation law. Today we don't see it because we live in a world of randomness, and you know the word olam in Hebrew derived from concealment.
From what?
Concealment, hiddenness of God. But this is what allows us to be human beings with free will. If God revealed himself, we will not have free will. The human condition is to live in 2 worlds. A world where the law of nature is visible, is apparent, we know what happens if we violate the law of nature. And there is another world of randomness where we have free will. We can't be certain what will happen as a result of our deeds. Randomness is still in the physical world. The randomness and the law of nature are here. Now I want to emphasize when I am talking about randomness, I didn't say that there are no laws for randomness. We know chaos theory, we know statistics, but when I talk about randomness is how we as individuals experience it. And we experience both law of nature and we experience randomness. And only in the area of randomness can we exercise our free will. The two names, Elohim and Jehovah, is what is emphasized again and again and again in the Torah and the prophets. These are two concepts of the leadership of God. I'm very anxious and careful not to say that they describe God, because we know nothing about God. But we can, and this is also rooted in the Torah. For example, when Moses wanted God to show him his glory, God said to him, "You can't see me. You can only see me from behind." So we can only see the results of the leadership of God. So I'm very careful. The names do not refer to God, they refer to the leadership in the world. To be like God, to eat from the tree of knowledge, and to be like God, they meant to be like Elohim. And this is human history. Because until now, what we did is trying, and successfully trying, to control the law of nature. In this area where randomness rules, first the Torah said, don't think that there is real randomness in the world. And there is one verse that I always repeat again and again, and it appears in my book. God says to the people of Israel, "Im telchu imi bekeri, ve'alachti imachem bechamat keri." If you will walk with me, God said to the people of Israel, if you walk with me with randomness, if you think that everything in the world is random, I will walk with you with the wrath of randomness, anger of randomness. So you think it's random, I'll show you what random means. Things will befall you and you'll not know wherever it came from, it ever came to you. So the Torah said, in this area where you have free will, in the world of randomness, these are the laws. You don't have to make scientific experiments to know the laws. Here are the laws. You can either obey them or you can violate them. For the time being, it's free will. But you should know there is law, even if the law is not visible, like the law of gravitation. But you still have the free will
To choose the wrong.
whether to believe it or not. Because we were not in the Har Sinai, Ma'amad Har Sinai, we were not there.
Yeah.
So you, Avi, and me, as modern day individuals, have the free will to decide, first, whether we believe that God exists or not, and secondly, whether there is a law of morality that prevails in the world of randomness, that for us looks completely random all the time. The Torah said, you're wrong. There is rule of morality, because Elohim and Jehovah is one, the creator of the world and the source of morality. This is all one. And the Torah is very consistent about it. You see it in the use of Elohim and Adam and Jehovah. I'll give you just one example, more example. When you read the story of creation, the first chapter of Genesis, is there any Jehovah there? Not at all. When does Jehovah start? When is its first appearance? With the creation of man. Interesting, I mean, this is the mathematical precision of the Torah. In the creation of the world, there's only Elohim, because there Elohim is the creator of the world, of the law of nature. And we have to obey this world, because we see it, we observe it, we know that if we don't obey the law of nature, penalty is immediate. In the world of randomness, if we look at it without any preconception, it's random, I can do whatever I like, there are no consequences. But the Torah said, you're right, you're wrong. Jehovah is Elohim. You think that there's no morality in the world, in what happens to you? Simply. The world you did is composed of two syllables. Yad, did. It's yad plus yad. Yad, yod dalet, is hand. So when you have two hands together, shaking hands, you become a friend. How do you say a thing in Hebrew? So when you speak Hebrew, whether you want it or not, a certain way of thinking is imposed on you. Everything is the result of the word of God. So davar, a thing is davar. The root is to speak. What is the other word that you use in Hebrew instead of davar, a thing? You say chefetz. Chefetz is also שמתי את החפץ על השולחן. I put the thing on the table. Chefetz is a general word. What's the other meaning of chefetz? Will. אני חפץ ללכת לראות סרט. חפץ mean wish or will. So when you're speaking Hebrew, you connect things whether you want it or not. So when I said davar, I immediately say it's out of the speaking word of God. When I say chefetz, I say this is the fulfillment and the realization of the will of God, whether you want it or not. What I mean is that everything is the result of the God's speech and God's will. The 6 days of creation are creation of the word of God. God talked. So everything in the world, because I don't think there is a word more general than thing. But thing comes from ledaber, to speak. When my interview on the Jerusalem Post was published,
Okay.
I got a letter from an American gynecologist.
Okay.
And he gave me the latest research about the duration of the herion. Because there are two methods to measure the duration of a pregnancy. And one gave a number, I think something like 274 and another 266, depending whether it's the first pregnancy or not the first. He gave me research, and according to the research, it's not a very old research. The real number is 271.5, and herion is 271.
Because of the Hebrew word, the word.
Because of the Hebrew word. But the American gynecologist quoted an article that you can read it on Google.
Human pregnancy
That
is...
they did research what is the real duration of human pregnancy. And they calculated the average to be 271 and a half. And the herion come up to, is it 271?
It is,
I don't want,
true.
270, right. When I did a statistical analysis about the values of Hebrew words and how they are related to physical properties of the objects that the word represents, where the value of Hebrew words, put them on the horizontal axis, you put the values of the major physical property of the objects that the word stands for, and you have a straight line. What does it mean? It means that values of Hebrew words represent physical properties of the physical world.
There are at least 4 words in Hebrew that sum up values of letters comprising the word that results in a figure that contains repeated appearances of a single digit. I would like to take a look at 4 words: Aleph, Bechol, Sheleg, and Dam. That is the first letter of the Hebrew Aleph Bet, the word that we translate into English as firstborn, the word for snow, and the word for Dam, or blood. Talk to us about these four words, please.
Let's start with the Dam. Dam, Dalet, 4. The value of the letter Dalet is 4. The value of Mem, the second letter, is Mem. Together they create the number 44, a repeat of one digit. What 4 has to do with blood? 4 varieties of the blood. You said, okay, it's a coincidence. It doesn't mean anything. So you take Sheleg. And Sheleg is snow. And you combine the values of the letters in Sheleg. Sheleg is water. It counts to 3, 3, 3. The varieties of water is 3. Right? Ice, water, vapor. You go to a Bechor. How do you say Bechor in English? It's
Firstborn.
Firstborn, right. Firstborn, according to Jewish tradition, get double of all his brothers and sisters. This is this was told, I think, by the Gaon of Vilna. It's not mine originally. That Bechor, you added Bet, Kaf, Resh, the 3 letters, root of the word Bechor, it comes up to 222. 2, double, it shows in the word. And of course, Aluf, Aleph Lamed Pei, which represent many times God is related to by the name Aluf. You combine their letters, it comes up to 1, 1, 1. The oneness of God that we talked about before. So this gives you an example what I meant, not cherry picking, because if it was one example, you said, okay, it's cherry picking. But you get 4 different examples. In each example, the repeated digit directly relates to a major property of the object that the word stands for. And you can't relate to it as something random, because if it repeats so many times, probably it's not random.
We know that family relationships are extremely important. We have fathers, sons, grandsons, great-grandsons. It keeps going down line. I know you have some comments concerning this. Please address these for us.
The words for father, son, grandson, and great-grandson is Av, Ben, Neched, Dorevi. Now, each letter in a previous generation, the last letter in a previous generation, become the first letter in the next generation. So Av, the last letter is Bet. Ben, son, the first letter is Bet. Ben, the last letter is Nun. Neched, grandson, the first letter is Nun. Great-grandson, the Bible referred to them as 4th generation. There is no great-grandson in the Bible. So Dorevi, you have Neched, right? The last letter is Dalet. For the next generation, Dorevi, the first letter is Dalet. And I show it also with other cases, like in plants and other cases, that the phenomena repeats itself again and again. If 2 objects are somehow connected, they share letters. So the structure of the biblical Hebrew words reflect.
How about the generations of the structures of trees and plants? This is another one of those interesting ideas that appears so often in biblical Hebrew.
It's exactly the same phenomena that we saw with the son, a father, son, grandson, and so on. So you have a geza, it's a stem, right? it finishes with the letter Haim in Hebrew. Anaf, branch, start with Haim. So since the branch comes out of the geza, of the stem, they share the same letter. The last letter here is the first letter there. You have Anaf. The last letter in Anaf is Pei. Pei is the first letter in Perach and Pri. Perach is flower, Pri is fruit. You don't know, so you have two letters that are the same, the Pei and the Resh. They are the same in Perach and in Pri. So sharing letters again reflect physical reality.
Now we go into the physical world of nature, the route of water in nature, and how water comes from deep within the earth and finds its way out into rivers and streams. Talk to us about that, please.
These four words that you refer to have the same relation to one another, like the Father, the Son, and the Great Son, because Tehom are the underground water. Ma'ayan is a fountain where the underground water come up. Nahar, river, is what comes out of the fountain. So you take these words, they are connected, and again, the last letter in Tehom, underground water, is the first letter in Ma'ayan, fountain, or lake. The last letter in lake is the first letter in Nahar, river. The river that takes the water from the lake into the sea. So last and first letters are now connecting objects that are connected in the physical world. It's amazing. It's just, I mean, the more you dig into the structure of the Hebrew, the biblical Hebrew, you find structure that it's hard to believe it.
Now there is more case design in Hebrew as we deal with the male species of humanity and that of the word in Hebrew for memory, remembrance.
The word male in Hebrew means zachar, and the root of this word is to remember. Either it has to do with the Jewish circumcision, that the circumcision is supposed to be a reminder, or some other reasons, I don't know. But I find it very interesting that you take two completely different words and they are combined by a common root.
How about flesh, meat, basar, and the word good tidings or good news, okay, or besorah? What's this all about in Hebrew?
Very related example, you get ot, which is both a letter and a signal. So does it mean that every creature who has flesh also have a certain tiding for the world?
Could we call it an essence, perhaps?
It's more the tiding is to bring good news, right? Levaser. It means that every creature that have flesh, at the same time his own existence, bringing some good news to the world. Levaser. You and I and every creature, we have some besorah, some tiding to bring to the world.
Okay.
This is how I interpret, but again, it's just a guess. Not just in reverse, but the meaning of the word read in reverse is relevant to the word when you read it in the correct way. So Lavan appears in all Jewish sources as a villain. He tried to cheat Yaakov. You read it in the Bible. You read Lavan backward, it's Naval, a villain. You take Moshe, Moses, you read backwards, Hashem. Hashem in Hebrew, God. Noach, you have it in Genesis, and here the Bible itself says it. ונוח מצא חן בעיני אלוהים. Noach, nun chet, מצא חן, found favor with God. Chen is reading Noach in reverse. The bush, when Moses saw the bush that was burning and was not consumed, you read Hasne in reverse, it is Hanes, miracle. I mean, it's really amazing.
Okay, how about Roa? Roa, it's wickedness.
Roa, you turn it around, it's it's a curtain, skin, yes. You can read it also as Iver, blind. And this sits very well with another word in Hebrew, which is sin or miss. You say in Hebrew, chet. Chet means also sin, and it also means missing the target. According to the biblical Hebrew, you are not a sinner, you can't sin. You just miss the target. You just have to, you diverted from the right way, you have to come back to the right way.
How about the word Osher? Osher is riches. But what happens if you have a love for riches that is not in accordance with divine law? Then what do you have?
So Osher, again, you read it in reverse. It read Resha, evil. So riches you can have either in the right way, but you can do it also in the wrong way. I make a distinction in my book between things that can be validated statistically by quantitative analysis and other things that I can prove statistically according to the scientific methods. All those occasions where I can't prove statistically that they are not random, the probability of the cases happening by random, the probability is so low that they can't be random, I take them as scientifically established. All the other cases, including the cases that you mentioned now, I have no choice but to relate to them as coincidences. And whether they are coincidences or not, it's a personal decision of every individual.
Of course.
It's different matter when you have a statistical analysis, because statistical analysis is a certain formality, and you can argue whether the statistical analysis is correct or not. But once you agree that the methodology, the statistical analysis is scientifically correct, you can't retreat from it. In reverse, it means tom. And tom in Hebrew is both completeness and innocence.
Wholeness, innocence,
Wholeness,
naivety.
right.
So how is that related? How is that opposite death? It's
Because
life,
it's like the Hebrew, the biblical Hebrew is conveying to you a message that with that you completed something and you become whole. That's how I understand it.
Now, I know you have some ideas concerning coincidences in the Bible, such as the hidden, unexpected information that appears in the Bible for randomness and cold. This is very important. Talk to us about randomness in this world versus cold.
There are two words in Hebrew that until about 100 years ago, everybody would tell you they are unrelated. One word is kor or kara, which means cold. Another word is kara, happened, or mikre. They are the same root, meaning randomness. What is the connection between cold and randomness? In everyday life, no connection yet. Until some years ago, there were two separate concepts of entropy. Entropy is a measure of lack of order. Okay? We say that since the Big Bang, entropy of the world grows all the time. So we have two concepts of entropy, one in physics and one in information theory. The first concept of entropy is tightly connected to cold. The second concept of entropy relates to information theory, and it is a measure of lack of information in a certain message. Those two concepts of entropy were disconnected until a few years ago, when some scientific work was done and the two concepts are connected. We now know that entropy of information theory and entropy of thermodynamics, they are the same entropy. It's one concept. But in Hebrew, it's the same word, kara. When you say kara in Hebrew, you mean cold, noun, and you mean also kara, it happened randomly. Like in English, occur, kara and occur is really the same word, right? So kara in Hebrew means occur by randomness, only through the concept of entropy. There's a concept of entropy that was developed mostly by a very well-known physicist by the name of Boltzmann. And this is the concept of entropy in thermodynamics. It is tightly connected to cold. I don't want to go too much into it, but what you're saying generally, that if there is transfer of heat, it always goes from the hotter object to the colder object. And the cooler the world becomes, the higher the entropy. And we are, the whole universe is cooling down and its entropy is going up. So this physical concept of entropy by Boltzmann relates to cold. And there was another concept of entropy that was conceived by Shannon, the father of information theory. And there you have it with randomness. It has to do with randomness. So one concept conceived in two different disciplines that only recently were combined into a single concept of entropy. In Hebrew, it's the same word. Why bad things happen to good people? This is the question. This is the issue here. People are always wondering, why bad things happen to me? Now, when people are asking this question, they see the world as random. There's no other explanation. If you see the world as random, you can ask the question, why bad things happen to good people? Not completely random. People tend to think that they know what will happen to them if they do certain things. This is how we are used to, you remember, in the world of law of nature. So the question is how Jehovah appears in the world of randomness. How you see the leadership of Jehovah in the world of randomness. And here I have my own personal ideas that not everybody should agree. And here I leave the facts, as we talked about before, and we migrate to the area of opinion. Too many times in my life, I experience things that happened to me that I could understand their significance many years later. Something bad had to happen to me so as to avoid something much worse. You don't realize it until after it happens to you. And Avi, I had so many cases in my personal life where things that I considered as bad, as unfortunate, I tormented myself why they happened to me. In the final analysis, they were all for the good. At the end, everything is good. And if it's not good, it means that it's not the end. I saw it in some movie, and this is an excellent sentence to conduct your life. If things are bad, it means it's not the end. In the end, everything is good. It's not just not obeying God. Im telchu imi bekeri, it means if you think that everything that happens to you is random, if you think that everything is random, you remember the world of randomness? If you think that in this world where you have free will, if you think that there is randomness there, and you ignore Jehovah, like Adam and Eve ignored Jehovah, I'll inflict you with 7 times the randomness. That's the Hamat carry. You walked with me with carry, with randomness, I'll show you what randomness is. Things will happen to you which you'll not be able to explain at all, if you think that everything is random. God is not obligated to us at all.
Yeah.
But again, I'm saying it again, if you read the prophets, they use the word Jehovah all the time. They don't use Elohim.
Yes.
Because Jehovah is morality and it relates to the world of randomness. In biblical Hebrew, when you have a word that ends with Haim, it relates to objects that appear in 2. You say 1 week is Shavua. 2 weeks is Shvuaim. You say Haim, 1. 2 eyes, a 9. Ozen, Oznaim. Yad, Yadayim. So every object that appears in the singular and in the plural it appears in 2, the end is Haim. So the end of Haim represents symmetry. Yad, Yadayim, you have symmetry. The 2 represents symmetry. You go to Mayim and you ask yourself, wait a minute, Mayim is water. What symmetry is there about water? Why Mayim still comply with this characterization of the symmetry? You go into physics and you find out that the water molecule is symmetric. The water molecule is composed of one oxygen, 1 atom of oxygen, and 2 of hydrogen. Now, if you put an axis and rotate, in theory, rotate the molecule around the axis, it is symmetrical. The 2 hydrogen around the oxygen are connected in symmetry. So physicists talking about the symmetry of the molecule of water. And here you have the word Mayim in Hebrew that has the same structure as all other words in Hebrew that represent symmetry. The most important thing, and I think amazing, is that also the name life implies symmetry. Haim, why should life be symmetrical? Is it the afterlife? I don't know. But the fact is that life is also expressed in a word that implies symmetry. Like yadayim, like enaim, like oznaim, like raglaim, legs, they all imply symmetry. So this is also from a Jewish tradition, that they knew this property of Haim as implying symmetry, or two, so they asked themselves, why is Yerushalayim of the same structure with Haim at the end? So their answer was, there is Jerusalem of down and the Jerusalem of above.
Okay, and like, how about Hashemayim?
Shamayim is also symmetrical, and I dedicate a whole chapter in the book about symmetry as the most basic property of the cosmos. Symmetry. You look anywhere in the sky, from your position as an observer on Earth, you see certain stars here, certain stars there. You don't think about the sky as symmetrical. But cosmologists point to the fact that the sky, the universe, is symmetrical. You don't have any preference to any position in the heaven. So the sky is symmetrical. No information. And this is how cosmologists describe the cosmos, the universe, at the Big Bang. There was no information. It was completely uniform, like in a desert. Now you take Tohu Vavohu. What words are derived from Tohu Vavohu, the two words in Genesis? Lithot is to wander. Livhot, you have a patient in the clinic, sitting waiting for his appointment, and livhot, just to look, not seeing anything. Staring and seeing nothing. So Tohu Vavohu very fundamentally implies lack of information. This is exactly how cosmologists describe the universe at the moment of creation. No information. Since then, there is creation of information all the time. Uniformity. This is the description of the universe at the Big Bang. In terms of entropy, the physical concept, entropy was at its minimum at the moment of creation.
Okay.
So saying that there was chaos, on the contrary, chaos increases as the age of the universe increases. This is what physicists teach us. But Tohu Vavohu is an exact description of the world at the Big Bang. Well, the phenomena that we saw before about relations between generations, you remember father, son, grandson, we talked about underground water, lake, river, and so on, and about the tree. The same phenomena is repeated here. When you have a certain part of the body that is part of another part of the body, they share letters that appear in both words. Yerech and Berech, for example. Yerech is a, how do you call it? Yerech?
We call it a thigh.
A thigh, right?
Yeah.
And Berech is a knee, and knee is part of the thigh, right?
Yeah.
So Berech and Yerech, they share the same two letters. They have one letter different. I did a whole research about it. I even turned to the Nobel Prize Committee to ask them to allow me to quote from a certain a speech by a Nobel Prize laureate about this finding. The root of ozen, of course, comes from balance. Moznaim in Hebrew is balance. leazen is balance. So if you ask somebody, say at the beginning of the 19th century, why the ozen is called so, he wouldn't be able to give you an explanation. Today we know that the balancing mechanism resides in the ears. We didn't know it until the end of the 19th century. And I give the timeline of the research made in Europe in different countries until they came to the realization that the balancing mechanism is in the ear. They had no clue about it. They had no clue. But it's in the Hebrew language. Moon, earth, and sun. If you remember, I started with explaining Celsius and Fahrenheit. You draw it, it forms a straight line. Then I said, if you take earth, moon, earth, and sun, and you draw the numerical values of the Hebrew words on the horizontal axis, the diameter in a log scale, on the vertical axis, they are aligned on a straight line. You take biblical Hebrew names for colors. There aren't many there, and not all have very known, not all have known meanings. So I took only 4 names that there are no argument what they mean. I took Adom, red, Tzahov, yellow, Kahol, or Tchelet, blue, and green, which in modern Hebrew is Yarok. In the Bible it appears as Yerakon. And there's also Argaman. Okay, so I have 4 names. Now I put the numerical values of these names on the horizontal axis, and I put the wave frequencies on the vertical axis. Now they cannot exactly align on a straight line, because if you say Tzahov, there is an interval of wave frequency. You don't have one wave frequency for Tzahov. So you don't expect it to be exactly on a straight line, but I can do a statistical analysis to determine whether their proximity to a straight line is to be expected, or it has such a low probability that there is something else here. So I draw the colors, and it shows again that the names of colors in biblical Hebrew represent wave frequencies of the colors as we know them today. I consider this finding that when you draw a set of interrelated Hebrew words, that you put the numerical values on the horizontal axis, and you take a major property of the physical property that is shared by all the objects. You draw it on the vertical line, vertical axis, and you have a straight line. This has scientific validity that cannot be undermined. That's why I consider this statistical analysis as the most important part of my work. You take the names of metals, you put the numerical values on the horizontal axis, you take the atomic weights on the vertical axis, the points are on a straight line. If you see points aligned on a straight line, it means the horizontal axis, the vertical axis are measuring the same thing. Only don't forget, the horizontal axis has to do with biblical Hebrew, vertical axis has to do with the physical world. Okay, so let me put it in more exact terms. You remember I put 2 requirements.
Okay.
If you are discussing the possible divine source of the Torah,
Okay.
I put 2 requirements. You remember what were the 2 requirements? One was that we'll find information in the Torah that could not have been known in ancient times.
Yes.
And the second requirement was that we'll see a certain phenomena that is consistent. It will not be cherry picking. And this analysis, where again and again and again I find sets of related words, that the numerical values are related to a shared physical property, this phenomena repeats itself again and again and again. It repeats itself in colors, it repeats itself in the diameters of moon, earth and sun. By the way, I do an analysis of all the planets. It's not just 3 celestial bodies, it's more than that. And it appears in metals, it appears in many other instances. So the second requirement is fulfilled. I'm not cherry picking. I take more than 20 examples from different areas and show again and again and again that numerical values of biblical Hebrew words reflect a major physical property. The word in Hebrew in the story of Adam and Eve and their desire to eat of the tree of knowledge, they call it Etz Adat Tov Vera. The tree of knowledge, good and bad. There's no Hebrew word for evil in the story of Adam and Eve. The whole translation of good and bad into good and evil is, to my mind, wrong, because Adam and Eve were not interested in right and wrong. They were not interested in justice. They were not interested in Jehovah. The only reason they ate from the tree of knowledge is to access dominion over nature. That's why they used only the word Elohim, while the narrator 11 times relates to God by the 2 words Elohim, Jehovah. And that's why when God turned to Moses, the verse says, and Elohim talked to Moses and said to him, I am Jehovah. The whole message of the Torah is that the 2 worlds, the world of the law of nature and the world of randomness, they are one world. One is related to Elohim, one is related to Jehovah. Elohim and Jehovah is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. This is the message of the Torah. There are 2 sets of laws. There's the set of laws of nature related to Elohim. There's another set of laws related to Jehovah. The law of Elohim is the law of nature. Gravitation is the law of Elohim. Justice, righteousness, the 10 Commandments are law of Jehovah. And the Torah said they are one. You have to combine these 2 sets of laws. When we ignore the Torah, we violate the second set of laws, where we think everything is random. And the Torah said, Ani elech imachem bechamat keri. If you'll walk with me with randomness, I'll inflict on you randomness 7 times. Things will happen to you, you'll not be able to explain why. Here is why. Because you saw that everything is random and you disobeyed my commandments. The commandments of Jehovah. Let me say that what happens in Israel, I believe, was expected by the prophets. So I believe what is happening now is in line of what the prophets foresaw for our time. A situation of deserting the Torah, deserting morality, and I believe that we are living in an era that parallels the time of the Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel and Adam and Eve, it's the same story. Adam and Eve wanted to eat from the fruit of knowledge in order to obtain dominion over nature. What did they want to do in the Tower of Babel? The same thing. To reach God and be like God, but God of Elohim. So I believe this is just a transition period where humankind have dominion over nature that we never had in history. But we have to come back to the morality and justice that was at the foundation of Judaism and also the foundation of the fathers of the American Constitution. Avi, I want to tell you how some of the ideas came to me, especially the statistical analysis.
Okay.
It was in a matter of 2 weeks that I felt that I am flooded with ideas. Just to give you an example, I used to go to sleep, nearly fell asleep. Idea came to my mind. I was afraid that I will forget it. I got up, wrote it down, went to sleep. And in a matter of 3 weeks, I felt that I was flooded with ideas. And for me, it was such a surprise because I didn't think of writing this book. I mean, I collected here and there some things, but this flood of new ideas, and I'm talking especially about the statistical analysis. So there's only one way to explain it. You take Job, for example. Job is considered the most ancient book in the Bible. It's traditionally written by Moses.
Yeah.
And so many verses I simply don't understand because the Hebrew is so difficult. Many words, we don't know what they mean.
Because they're ancient words.
Ancient words, or maybe they appear only once and you can't understand from the context what it means. So you have all kinds of guesses. But I myself, if you experience difficulty, I have to tell you, I have my own difficulty.